Good evening and welcome to the Milwaukie 2022 Candidate Debate. My name is Greg Hemer, the Secretary of the Linwood NDA. Your government only asks two things of you. One, pay your taxes. Two, elect your representatives. It is important that we, as the residents of Milwaukie, take the time, scratch out your little bubbles. State of Oregon is the easiest state to vote in. All you have to do is put it in the mailbox by November 8th or drop it off into one of the Clackamas County boxes located at City Hall in the Public Safety Building by November 8th by 8 o'clock. Your voice matters. Linwood NDA does not care why you vote, who you vote for, what issue you're voting for. Just vote. The program tonight is sponsored by the Linwood Neighborhood District Association and Hemer's Helping Hands with our filming crew of Willamette Falls Studios. If you aren't aware, Milwaukie is divided into 7 districts by neighborhoods we all call NDAs. Linwood NDA encourages all of our residents to attend an NDA meeting and join in the festivities your NDA offers. Not only do they provide opportunities to join in a public service project, but they provide an outlet for neighborhood issues, fun activities, and just an opportunity to get to know your neighbors. If you do not know what NDA you live in or need to know when your NDA meets, visit www.milwaukieoregon.gov and click on the Neighborhoods tab on the top of the page. Trust me, joining your NDA and being an active member is not a chore, but a wonderful opportunity to make a difference in your community. Tonight, we'll hear from all 6 candidates running for Milwaukie offices during the 2022 election year. Councilor Adam Khosrowshahi and Rebecca Stavangard are running unopposed for council positions. Later, we'll have a mayoral debate between Councilor Lisa Beatty and Councilor Kathy Heisey, plus a council debate for position number 2 between Elvis Clark and Robert Massey. Linwood NDA believes in transparency of this process. We invited 30 members of the community to be part of the information committee. The committee met in person and received queries via email asking 4 questions. What do you like about Milwaukie? What do you dislike about Milwaukie? What are your future concerns about Milwaukie? And what question would you ask the candidate? The information was put into categories, and Greg Hemer, Liz Start, and Zach Perry formed them into questions you will hear tonight. After this program is completed, the information and raw data will be shared with City Council, the City Manager, and the candidates, making it public knowledge. Linwood NDA feels that this process is not only important to inform our residents about the current campaigns, but help us work together and forward into the future. A special thank you for Zach Perry for running our Zoom operation tonight and Liz Start for being our moderator. Each unopposed candidate will be given 5 minutes in a general address to the voters. During the mayoral and councilor position number 2 debate, we will give 3 minutes for an opening statement and 3 minutes for a closing remark. After each question is asked by our moderator, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to respond. Greg Hemer will be operating the timer for candidates to understand their time limits. To determine who goes first, the moderator has flipped a coin before tonight's program to determine the order. All right, so there we go. Now that the rules are out of the way, let me please introduce Rebecca Stavangard.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Okay. It's a small room, so fingers crossed. Good evening. My name is Rebecca Stavangard. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Llewellyn neighborhood of Milwaukie, and I'm running for position 4 on Milwaukie City Council. I'd like to thank the organizers, the Linwood NDA, the Hemers, and the Letting Library for hosting us, and thanks to Willamette Falls for broadcasting. And also a big thank you to everyone who showed up here in person and those that are watching at home. I am a mom to a middle school student at Rao Middle School. My husband, Jeff, is in the back. He and I are the co-owners, the humans that run the Three Stinky Goats urban farm in North Milwaukie. It's a focus on permaculture and community building. And yes, there are 3 moderately stinky goats that live there too. I have worked in the public sector for about 25 years in Clackamas County and in Multnomah County. I spent a lot of time volunteering in youth serving organizations, and also I'm the chair of the Llewellyn Neighborhood Association. I moved to Milwaukie about 20 years ago as a renter for the first time, and the housing market even then was tight, so I wasn't able to buy a house then, but I moved into Oak Grove and then eventually Southeast Portland. And eventually then my family and I were able to settle in North Milwaukie in the Llewellyn neighborhood. We've been putting down deeper roots ever since. And I'm seeing a lot of change coming to Milwaukie. It's been a process that we've been a part of for a number of years, and there's a lot more that's on the horizon, which brings me to this podium this evening. And I think that the way that the world is changing so rapidly around us is one of the major reasons why I'm running, because I do want to be part of guiding Milwaukee's next phase of growth and change in an equitable and sustainable direction for all of our residents. Over the next several years, our city is going to add much needed housing units of all different types across the city. And we need to have thoughtful planning to make sure that we have the amenities in place, that we have the infrastructure in place, and that we welcome new neighbors with just as much support as we have for long-term residents who are trying to maintain their homes and their housing. That comes down to a good mix of housing affordability, quality, and availability. And so I'm committed to those areas in our future conversations around housing. It also means working with partners at Clackamas County and Metro around supportive services and transitional housing for our unhoused residents of Milwaukie. I've worked for Multnomah County for about 14 years, and I worked for Clackamas County before then. So a lot of conversations around what that housing stability looks like and the support services for unhoused residents are near and dear to my heart, and I want to bring that partnership to the council. The other issues that intersect with those issues around housing are transportation safety, accessibility, making sure that we have safe routes for community members and our youth to get around our neighborhoods, parks development, all the amenities that help Milwaukie residents thrive. I'm proud to serve on Clackamas County's Housing Advisory Board, and I also have the endorsement of the Street Trust Action Fund because I believe that these partnerships are better when we work together. Over the last several years, we've seen a lot of impacts of climate change, and those are not lessening. Summer heat events, winter ice storms, fires, droughts, the fact that it's been 85 degrees in October, all of those things have a big strain on our community and even more so on residents that are most vulnerable. I'm ready for conversations at the city around resilience planning, around neighborhood hubs, the continued work around Milwaukee's climate action plan. And as we grow and our community becomes more densely populated, our work to increase the tree canopy, build and maintain local parks, and to encourage safe transportation routes should be at the forefront. Our kiddo is 12 years old, and the mental stress of climate change weighs on the minds of youth every single day, weighs on all of our minds every single day, but I'm seeing that play out in their friend groups. And I want to be part of bold policy that has an impact locally, but also sends a message to other jurisdictions that Milwaukie is taking climate action and climate justice seriously. I want to help be a part of preserving that future for our youth. So I guess that was 5. Thank you.
And the next unopposed candidate running for position number 2 is Councilor Adam Khosrowshahi.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Willamette Falls Studios, and all of you for being here, and everyone on Zoom for joining us. My name is Adam Kostrobati. In June 1st, actually, I had the honor and pleasure of being appointed as your city councilor to fill the seat of Councilor Angel Falconer, who stepped down. The seat that I'm running for is to fill the remainder of her term, which runs until, 2024, which at that point I have to run again. I moved to Milwaukee with my wife in 2019, and we were able to buy a house at that time. We bought our house for $380,000, and if it wasn't for the VA loan, I probably wouldn't have been able to even afford that home. Here we are 3 years later, and that same home is probably going to be selling potentially for $550,000 to $600,000. To me, that's a troubling trend, and that's a big problem. I do understand that as a city, we can't control the market. However, we can be bold and we can be creative in ways that we bring affordable housing to the forefront of what we need to do. When I speak about affordable housing, it's not just your rent, it's not just what you pay to keep the house over your head, the roof over your head. It's what you pay for your utilities. It's what you pay for your groceries. It's what you pay for your homeowner's insurance. These are all things that are part of your cost of living, and I think that's an area that Milwaukee needs to focus on, considering the fact when you look statistically, we currently pay more for our utilities than cities like Lake Oswego, which in my eyes is an issue because when you look at median housing income as well as home values, there's a huge disparity. I'd like to invest more in the people. We have quite a bit of fees that I'd like to see those fees go back into incentives to help us accomplish a lot of the goals that we're trying to do, a lot with our climate action. I'd like to see more incentives to be present in ways for people to save on their utility bills. We have a unique position here in Milwaukee with the 21,000 people. Some people might think that we're restricted because of our size, but I think it actually empowers us even more. Because of this community, we have a lot of people that can come together that can accomplish a lot of the goals we are trying to do. And I would really love to see us open that doorway to more of the community. I do hear sometimes that the city, we may not listen as much to members of the community. And if anybody in this room or anybody on Zoom feels that way, I apologize. We are open and we are available. And I'm here specifically to reach out and try to see the professionals that we have here in this community and use the minds that we have just in this room to accomplish these goals. We have engineers, we have professionals, we have contractors, we have developers, we have people that have worked for cities before that are retired currently, and these are all people and individuals that we could use, help accomplish the goals that we have, and potentially not have to pay outside firms to be able to get these things done. We have the people here, and I would like to invite anyone who has expertise in any of these areas to reach out and speak to me, because I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say about accomplishing the goals that Milwaukee has set. When it comes to affordable housing, I'm a big proponent of that, and I think the key to that isn't necessarily building more homes. It's building more affordable homes or building more homes affordably. We are currently bringing about 1,600 units into Milwaukee between now and 2024. I think only about 500 of those are considered affordable housing units. That to me is an issue. And I understand that by building more and having more inventory, it drives down price. I get the ideology behind that. However, the problem is you'd have to build on a large scale, and you'd have to build immensely. You'd have to have a lot more than 1,600 units to come online. In my eyes, that's the same ideology as trickle-down economics. I don't feel like we need to give developers the free rein to build whatever they want in Milwaukee. I think that at this point with our developments, we have the opportunity to be very specific on making sure that what's being developed here is exactly what we need. Out of those 1,600 units, 500 being affordable is unacceptable. I think that we can be more aggressive. I believe that developers are a dime a dozen. I used to be in construction, by the way. I don't have anything against developers, but I feel like a lot of times it's business. This is a capitalistic country. The goal is to maximize profit. And unless either we mandate it or unless we incentivize it or unless we tell them how we want it done, it's not going to get done any other way but by the profits. So that's where council can step in. That's where the community can step in. That's where our voices can be heard, and that's what we can do, and that's what we have the capability of doing, and that's what I plan on doing. Also, economic development. The other side of that is, since we can't control the market, and housing costs will continue to rise, we can bring better paying jobs to Milwaukee. And I think that's also the key to affordability. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Councilors Khosrowbadi and Stavenjord for sharing their platforms with us, and hopefully you will vote for them unopposed on the ballot this fall. I think I can say that since they're unopposed, right? Sorry if anyone's bothered, or if you have a write-in candidate against them. So I am, as I'm Liz Start, I use she, her pronouns. I am the chair of the Linwood NDA. As a community, we're very lucky to have two fantastic candidates running for mayor who have both given so much to our community already and serving currently as city councilors. So I'd like to invite Councilor Kathy Heisey and Councilor Lisa Beatty to the podiums.
I didn't realize you were going to have us both up here at the same time.
Yes, you're going to be in the hot seat. So Councilor Heidi, I'm making up your name, Heisey, won the coin toss. However, she deferred to Councilor Beatty. So Councilor Beatty elected to introduce herself second. So we're going to have Councilor Heisey have 3 minutes. 3 minutes to introduce yourself. Then we'll go to Councilor Beatty.
Great. Greg, can you remind me, the yellow light means 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay, great.
1 minute when the green light is blinking. Sorry, I should have explained that.
That's okay.
I just figured everybody'd see this.
I'm not usually on the other side,
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for having this event. Thank you for those of you who watch it later for taking the time to engage and learn a little bit about your local government. A lot of folks don't put in the time and the effort, so I really mean that when I say that. You're making a difference in your community just by showing up. My name is Kathy Heisey. I'm currently the council president on Milwaukee City Council. I live in the Island Station neighborhood, about 2 blocks from Lisa. And in these introductions, oftentimes people are really asking, what is the why? Why are you running for mayor? And I am a public speaker who doesn't generally rehearse, and I speak too fast, so I'm trying to slow it down. And mostly I just wanted to speak from the heart for a minute, because I don't know that everyone knows my story, and it really informs a lot of that why. So I was born in Chicago, lived in Michigan for 10 years. My parents met when my mother was working as a waitress at a restaurant, and I actually don't know what my dad was doing. He was working possibly as a driver at the time. And, they met, one thing led to another, and they got married, had me, and my mother was sick with Hodgkin's disease her entire life. She was diagnosed when she was 19. I was born when she was 35. So my household was one that always knew illness. And after a botched surgery left her unable to lift her arm, she was unable to work. So we became a single income family, and a family that was burdened by illness. And my mother died when I was about 11. So then I became a child in a single parent family. That's an experience that I think a lot of Milwaukeeans can identify with, living with illness, living with just the challenges of having a family loss and an incomplete family. I remember my Busha going on food stamps when my Jaja, Busha is grandmother, Jaja is grandfather in Polish, he got to be too much to take care of at home with Alzheimer's. So my family has had a lot of the experiences that folks here have had as well. And that informs a lot of my policy-making decisions and my drive to want to continue to serve this community. It is incredible the way Milwaukee shows up for each other. It is truly something I have never witnessed elsewhere. And I'm so proud and so humbled to be able to serve this community, and I would love to keep doing it. And all of this, I hope, illustrates why, if you've seen anything about my campaign, you've seen that I'm campaigning about Milwaukee for everybody. And my interests are in safe and livable neighborhoods, transportation options, climate justice, and affordable housing options for everyone. And that's the everyone I mean. Thanks.
Oh, can you stay at the podium?
Yeah.
You just set me up for that by having everyone do that before.
Thank you, Councillor Heisey and Councillor Beatty.
Okay. Thank you very much, Liz and Linwood NDA, for inviting us here. I did want to explain I am going to keep my mask on tonight, and it's because I'm just getting over a bout of COVID. I have been testing negative the last 48 hours, but just out of abundance of caution, I'm going to stay masked. So I hope everyone can hear me okay and that I'm coming through okay. Again, thanks to the Linwood NDA, to Hemer's Helping Hands, to Willamette Falls Media, and to all of you who came out. It's great to see a room mostly full these days. I moved into my home down the street from Councillor Heisey in April of 2002. I didn't really choose Milwaukie. I chose that house because I was interested in an older home. I had looked mostly in northeast, southeast Portland. I chose that house. Little did I know to what extent Milwaukie would become so important to me. I knew very little about Milwaukie when I bought the house. Little did I know how much Milwaukie would come to mean to me. I became the neighborhood chair in short order, and one of my first projects as the neighborhood chair was to revive a plan that the neighborhood had had previously for Spring Park, which is the park that leads out to Elk Rock Island. In 2002, that was a just nest of blackberry. Many people felt it was unsafe, didn't like to walk the path to Elk Rock Island. The neighborhood had a plan for a pocket park and for improving that park, but had kind of hit some roadblocks and kind of given up to some degree, and I helped revive that effort, and eventually the park was built after lots of work parties from the neighbors, removing blackberry, removing invasive plants, etc. I quickly grew to love this little town and joined the Planning Commission fairly early on. And as a planning commissioner, I saw the city through two big controversies: the construction of the ball fields at North Clackamas Park, and then the light rail alignment, the Orange Line, which was very contentious. People who've come to Milwaukie in recent years may not realize how contentious it was, but there had been a recall of city councilors in the 90s. There were many people who were adamantly against seeing light rail come at all. And I was the planning commissioner through those hearings that determined the alignment and the station, what form the stations took, and station siting and all of that. From that process, I had two big lessons. Hear from everyone. Oh my God. Seriously? Okay, well, hear from everyone who wants to be heard. I'll say that's my takeaway from those controversies, and I'll hope that the rest of my introduction points will fit in somewhere else today.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I guess so.
So as Greg mentioned, these questions come from the information committee that was formed. That was a cross-section from all the NVA districts and, age ranges, all kinds of backgrounds. So that's how these questions were framed. So Councillor Beatty will ask you this question first, and then Councillor Heisey, and you each will have 3 minutes to answer the question. So the question is, you have both served on City Council for the last 4 years, making decisions and creating policies. During our information committee, Island Station residents were excited about their amenities, just like you had mentioned, river access, walkable streets, and a unique park. Since both of you live in Island Station and have access to these amenities, how do you understand and balance decisions with the needs and wants of all residents of Milwaukie, especially community members who live on the other side of McLaughlin that don't have quick access to these amenities?
Thank you. I think that's a great question. I do take that very close to my heart, that we have to have, we are the people, whether in Island Station or historic Milwaukie, who live close to the River have access that not everyone has, have easy access that not everyone has. I have been an advocate for Wichita Park and other park developments on the east side. I think it's really important that we ensure that everybody has access. Parking, you know, one of the things we learned in COVID was that everybody wanted to come to Elk Rock Island. Everybody wanted to come to Milwaukie Bay Park. We don't really have a lot of parking, and so that there were issues in the neighborhood about parking, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really, there are some tough, thorny questions there. I do think we're on the right track with building out more of our parks. Bowman Bray Park, Balfour Park, Scott Park have all been the subject of meetings in this room in recent days. If you don't know about those, go to Engage Milwaukie and take the little surveys, which close tonight. I do think, though, we have to look at the city as a whole, and I have always tried to do that, and ensure that there are amenities for both sides of town. One of the ones we talked about some years back was a library, like how to have some sort of small presence of the library on the east side of town. There are other ways where we do need to make sure that everyone has access to our amenities. And when we get Monroe Greenway built, it will help make 224 less of an obstacle, but 224 is still going to be an obstacle for people. And it is one of the thornier questions we have as a city. I don't know that I have a lot more to say about that.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
That was a lot of words.
Yes, it
please.
was. Okay. So you have both served on city council for the last 4 years, making decisions and creating policies. During our information committee, Island Station residents were excited about the amenities, river access, walkable streets, and a unique park. Since you both live in Island Station and have access to these amenities, how do you understand and balance decisions with the needs and wants of all residents, especially community members who live on the other side of McLaughlin and don't have easy access to these amenities?
Okay, got it. Thank you. I feel tremendously privileged to live where I live and to have such easy access to those amenities. It's an incredible place. It's part of why Colin and I chose that house. And every day I really do feel grateful for that opportunity. And I deeply value the work that has gone into making it something that everyone can access. And having 19th be a WUNRF, the concept being it's a walkable, bikeable, and drivable road, and that everyone shares it safely, I think is key. And having greater connection between our bike pedestrian networks, completing some gaps where we've got some issues. That's something that we will address in the TSP, the Transportation System Plan. That work is starting any minute now. And I think that will help create access to those very specific amenities that are basically the riverfront, which is one of the things that really draws people to Milwaukie. And it is something that everyone in Milwaukie ought to have ready access to. When it comes to providing amenities for other parts of the city, I think that we really do need to think about and have conversations around what that looks like. The Neighborhoods Hub concept is something that came out of the comprehensive plan update conversations we had with the community. Those are identified. If you're not familiar, just the brief overview is the idea is to have a spot in each neighborhood that is easy to access however you want to get there, driving, walking, biking, hopefully bus. And you can go there to gather with your community, maybe take a yoga class that someone offers. Maybe there's a coffee shop. It could look different in every different neighborhood. So that's a different approach to amenities. And I think it's one way that we can create those opportunities to get together as community and to enjoy being part of Milwaukie throughout the city. We have a very downtown and waterfront focused system right now. And I think that hubs program and just thinking more broadly about how do we share the beauty and bounty of this community across 224 is something we can do better and really think about in constructive ways as we pursue economic development opportunities, as we think about hubs, as we look at the transportation system plan and really think about the connectivity that we are creating between neighborhoods, not just to downtown, looking at our intersections that are currently unsafe for anyone, thinking about how those can be improved for vehicular access as well as for walkers and bikers, so that everyone has abundant options to get around whoever they are and however they choose to get around. Because that's always going to be part of how we get to the amenities in this town.
Thank you so much. So our second question is about the city and city council, and we'll start, you will be the first to answer, Councilor Heisey. So during our discussions with the information committee, we heard many comments that their voice does not matter. One person was specifically quoted as saying, "It's the facsimile of community involvement with city council that makes us feel like pawns are just window dressing for already decided upon objectives. What is your plan to be more receptive to others' opinions and adopting strategies and goals based on community involvement?"
Mm-hmm. You know, that's tough to answer without understanding the context behind that comment. It's a harsh comment, and it's brutal to know that that's how folks are feeling and that that's the overall feedback you had around community engagement. We, as a city, historically have gotten a lot of kudos for our community engagement work. The comprehensive plan update was something we actually won an award for. I don't mention that to rest on our laurels by any stretch, but I want to give that context for why that sounds surprising to me as someone on council. I think that when we are talking about community engagement, it is easy for us to conflate reaching out and talking to people and folks wanting to see us do what they tell us in some ways. And I'm not articulating this well, but I feel like there's something we can do in this process to be clearer about what we need to hear from the community in order to help shape our conversations. I do think that in the past year or so, we've had a lot of big things come up in very short order. And as they've gone out the door, I feel like we probably could have spent more time around that, around thinking about things like the tree code. The conversation we're having around a climate fee, I feel like is moving really, really fast. Those are both issues I'm passionate about, but I feel like the process, particularly as we were in COVID, coming out of COVID, unable to do things like this, it was very hard for people to feel like they were heard, and I understand that. So I would like to see us figure out how to be a little more deliberate in reaching out to people. I'm hoping that the work we're doing around parks right now and whether or not we should leave the Parks District is feeling like an opportunity for folks to really engage. I have been doing meetings all over the place. I know Lisa's been doing meetings. I hope that people are coming to those. It's hard when people just get upset and they don't come talk to us. And I know it's frustrating to have to take the time out to do that, but I do feel like we generally want to be available. So I guess I would mostly like to know what it is we could be doing that folks feel we aren't doing in order to really feel like there's better community engagement.
Thank you so much. Councilor Beatty, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. So during our discussion with the information committee, we heard many comments that their voice does not matter. One person was quoted as saying, "The facsimile of community involvement with city council makes us feel like pawns are just window dressing for already decided upon objectives. What is your plan to be more receptive to others' opinions in adopting strategies and goals based on community involvement?"
Well, I will second what Councilor Heisey said about, I would like to know what more we could do. This is something we struggle with every new process. How do we reach, I mean, we do know because Engage Milwaukie is starting to collect demographic data, we know we are not reaching all the people in disadvantaged communities, traditionally disadvantaged communities, people of color, et cetera, that we should, that we'd like to. And we're always looking for new ways to do that. But I guess really the crux of the comment is not that we're not reaching people, it's that we're not listening to what people say to us. And I do believe I was involved in all of council was involved in the comprehensive plan open houses, which were held over at the Waldorf School in their big gym. We had, 100 plus people at all of those, really well attended, really vigorous discussions, really, broad ranging suggestions that go into because the comprehensive plan is a sort of a vision document. It's not an implementation document. We're working on all the pieces of implementation now. But I will say, so I feel like we do listen, and I'm sorry to hear that people don't think that we do. I will also say we don't get very many complaints from people. Like when I was first on council, we used to get emails, grouchy emails, complaining about this or that, and we really don't get very many complaints anymore. I'm not suggesting everyone send in every complaint, but we don't hear. I mean, we have a few people. If somebody has a code enforcement issue, we sometimes hear about that. But in terms of sort of bigger questions of city policy or city action or inaction in some way, we really don't hear from people. I know there's somebody who happens to be in this room who has a pet project that he's an advocate for, and one of the longer time residents of the city told me that I told him he just needs to get 20 people to write city council about this. If you hear from 20 different people on an issue, you're going to stop and listen. And it's true. It's true. It doesn't take necessarily 20. There's no magic number. But if we know something interests or bothers a big cross-section of Milwaukee, we're going to stop and take a look. So, yeah, I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So these next two questions will also be asked of the counselor candidates. And Counselor Beatty, you will answer first. The Information Committee overwhelmingly said that their favorite thing was the small town feel with lots of amenities near city of Milwaukee. One major concern for adding density without a strategic plan for traffic, bikeways, pedestrian, and transit travel. How do you feel the density increase will affect our current system, and how do we plan and pay for needed improvements to our transportation needs?
Well, that's a very timely question because, as was referenced earlier, we're launching into our transportation systems plan. We did the TSP, I'm going to call it that from here on out, in 2007, and it's in need of an update. And it's one of the follow-up implementation pieces of the comprehensive plan. The TSP will guide where we think we need new infrastructure. Doesn't come with money. We still have to find the money to do the things, but it will be about an 18-month process. There will be a lot of public outreach in that process as well, and there's there are interviews going on now for people to serve on an advisory committee for that. Councilor Khosrowbadi is one of the people doing those interviews. The transportation system plan will be the how and where of how we figure out what we need for this new density coming in. Figuring out the funding will be a second piece. There are, regional, federal, regional money pots to apply for, such as we have done with the Monroe Greenway. The Monroe Greenway has been 10 years or so in the making, but it's fully funded now and it's going to move forward, and it's really exciting. So I do think the core of the question is an issue of concern to me, that we have to balance the growth with the livability for everyone who's here. And I do think that's something we have to think about. But we do need the housing. We do need the housing of all types and all sizes for all types of residents and sizes of household groups. So I'm excited about the new housing coming in. I'm excited about the potential for some middle housing to come in and give people, options somewhere between an apartment and a full-sized single-family house. I think those are important options for people to have. But I do think we need to look at all of that with, maintaining the livability of everyone. And so I do think the questions before the TSP group will be important ones and things we have to look at very closely.
Thank you. Councillor Heisey, to repeat the question, the Information Committee overwhelmingly said their favorite thing was the small town feel with lots of amenities near the city of Milwaukee. One major concern was adding density without a strategic plan for traffic, bikeways, pedestrian, and transit travel. How do you feel the density increase will affect our current system, and how do we plan and pay for needed improvements to our transportation needs?
Great. I'm glad that I have something in common with this committee because I love that about Milwaukie too. And I feel like that is at the heart of a lot of the work that we're doing right now. Councilor Beatty provided a great overview of what a transportation system plan update is going to look like. So we do have that opportunity coming. But I think that the bigger point there is how is density affecting our transportation system? And I want to take a step back a little. I serve on the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation for the region. So we are actually doing what is more or less a transportation system plan update at the region-wide level right now. It's called the Regional Transportation Plan. We're really great at names here. But in that work, I'm seeing a lot of exciting opportunities that I think are going to inform Milwaukee's TSP and set us up for pretty tremendous success when it comes to hitting all the right notes for grant proposals as we develop our TSP and as we see what the needs are really coming from the community. And I want to highlight to everyone out there who feels like they are not heard, please speak up in this TSP process. This is the place where you really, I think more than any other process practically we have going in Milwaukie in the next few years, can influence decisions the city is making. Because, I'm talking to folks online who are parents who are worried about intersections. And I'm saying, please, come. We need to hear from you now. This is going to be how we make this work done, make this work and get the work done. Because this process is where we really need the local experts more than anything. So your voice really does matter here. But that was a digression. So density is, of course, going to affect our system. And we are planning for it. We don't know what it will look like yet. It will be ugly at times. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's just the way of these things. Development happens on its own schedule. Our work on transportation systems happens on its own schedule. They won't always line up. But as we're doing that work, we absolutely do need to look at safety for people who are traveling by every single mode. We need to look at how we complete our network for active transportation and prioritize that. And I say that in part because I've been blown away by how little reduction in traffic it takes to free up congestion. We're talking like a 3% reduction in the number of cars can be the difference between a traffic jam and traffic flowing freely at peak hours. So that's the kind of thinking I think we need to bring to this and a real problem-solving perspective on this because density is happening. We need the housing desperately. We didn't build housing for decades in Milwaukie and people are paying the price. They are moving out because they don't have affordable options and we can't let that continue to be the case.
Thank you, Councillor Heisey. And the first answer or response will go to you as well. So both of you and our other candidates have already touched on the affordability and affordable housing, and that's what our next question is about. One of our information committee members is currently a renter in Milwaukie, and they would like to purchase a home, but due to the high prices to purchase a home in the city of Milwaukie and the increasing rental prices, they're likely going to have to leave our community just to meet their own needs. So with increased home prices, rental costs, and water bills, what specific plan can the city provide for those that call Milwaukie home today, but will not be able to afford it in the near future?
And am I the first person?
Mhm.
Okay, sorry. I lost track. I was raptured by
You're
the
enthralled.
words. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Go ahead. This is another place where there's painful truth. There isn't an immediate answer for that question. That specific person who wants to buy a house now, it is an extremely difficult environment to buy a house. I have a friend who moved here for a job. She's not in Milwaukee, but she's just on the other side of the boundary, because she was excited to finally, after decades of living in the Bay Area, have the opportunity to buy a house because she couldn't afford one. She was in an apartment. And then interest rates went up and she has to defer that dream again. And she makes plenty of money. It's not that she is low income. We have a labor shortage that's driving up costs. We have 500,000 people who can't work anymore because of long COVID across our country. So between interest rates, labor shortages, and the just incredible deficit of 111,000 homes that we did not build in Oregon over the past 2 decades, it is a very difficult time to buy a house. So I'm not going to pretend that my answers are going to be immediate, but I do feel like we have, through zoning and a lot of the work that we did with our middle housing code, made some good strides on creating more opportunities for folks to buy in Milwaukie. I do also feel like we're kind of at this inflection point in our culture where, maybe buying a house that is on a 50 by 100 lot or whatever is not really attainable. So we have to think about what are the different models for home ownership where you can build equity that are attainable out there. And those are, of course, going to be more middle housing, cottage clusters, condos, fourplexes, all the stuff we talked about in our middle housing code. So I actually think that's really important, but it is going to be a slow transition. I hope that we can continue to tweak that code to make it work better for us as we go. I also feel like we have opportunities around housing affordability that we haven't yet explored. I would like to look at ways that we might just do some zoning that creates opportunities, say, for churches, to make it very easy. This is a big thing in California right now. Some of it's happened in Oregon. But to make it really easy to just build on those sorts of properties. And that can reduce costs. I think we also have partnerships to explore with the county in terms of making sure that we are seeing investments in affordable housing, which is different than housing affordability. That's for certain income levels. You have to be referred to that kind of housing. But every person we put into a house is a person who does not need a house. So I think we can also work to reduce the demand on our system overall, but it is very slow work.
Thank you, Councilor Heisey. Councilor Beatty, to repeat the question. One of our information committee members is a renter in the city of Milwaukie. They would like to purchase a home, but due to high prices to purchase a house in Milwaukie and the increasing rental prices, will likely have to leave our community to meet their own needs. With increased home prices, rental costs, and water bills, what specific plan can the city provide for those that call Milwaukie home today, but will not be able to afford it in the near future?
When you read that question, I think of Becky Hayes, who was one of our members of our comprehensive plan advisory committee, who was someone in that situation. She wanted to buy. She had a small nest egg to buy a place. She wanted a condo. She wasn't necessarily looking for a single family house, but she couldn't find anything in Milwaukie to buy, and she ended up in Woodburn because that was the closest place that she could afford. And, we have 1,500 apartment units being built. As far as I'm aware, 0 of them are condominiums. So 0 of them are home ownership potential. And I do think that's a problem. And, I've talked with planners and, people who know housing finance about that. And there's a lot of sort of state law and insurance and various reasons why developers choose to build apartments and not condominiums. But I do think it's something we have to see if we can't address. I have to completely agree with Councilor Heisey about there's no near-term answer for someone who's looking to buy. The hope is, though, the middle housing, if we start seeing cottage cluster developments, and we have heard that there are a couple that may be coming in the Ardenwald neighborhood, or townhome developments. I lived in a townhome when I was a 20-something in the Washington, D.C. area. I didn't own it. I was a renter, but that was sort of a beginning home type for a lot of people. And it surprised me when I moved to Oregon and there were no townhomes. I'm like, where are the townhomes? So now we have the potential for those. I hope we're going to see some of those come in. There may be some things that council can do. I mean, we have the construction excise tax. So that was passed by council 4 years ago or so to create a fund to help support affordable housing. And we do have some tools to try and incentivize things like that. So I'm hopeful that 5 years from now, we're seeing townhomes, we're seeing cottage clusters, we're seeing other, actually under the state law now, you can build a fourplex and divide it into ownership parcels. Not the old idea of a duplex or a triplex was somebody owned it and rented out. But there's actually now we've rewritten the code about land divisions to allow ownership. So I do think promoting ownership is important. And I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Councilor Beatty. So this is our last question for our mayoral candidates, and we're going to start with Councilor Beatty on this one. And this question is about downtown Milwaukee. So one of the biggest concerns and dislikes about Milwaukee is about the vibrancy of downtown, or the lack thereof. What can you do as mayor to revitalize the streets, encourage more businesses, and create downtown as our city's focal point for shopping and entertainment?
That actually was one of the points I didn't get to in my opening. So
You're welcome.
I do think working with businesses, both downtown and our larger business community, is the one thing that I feel like we haven't done much of in my 8 years on council. Milwaukee has had a series of different downtown business owner associations in the 15 or so years I've been paying attention to that, and none of them have really ever taken hold. I do think it's not entirely on the city to revitalize downtown. But the city could be a better partner for bringing businesses together, for giving the business community some tool. People always say, look at Oregon City. Well, Oregon City has a very active downtown business association that businesses pay dues into to pay for a staffer who promotes the businesses and plans events and does activities in downtown. That is not something, we're always struggling. If you watch any city council meetings, you'll hear us struggling with what their staff capacity to do. There's many more things we'd love to do that we do not have enough staff or funding at the city level to do. And this is a great example. I would love to bring back First Friday. I thought First Friday was a good event for bringing some vitality to downtown and focusing on our businesses. But it has never really been the city's event. And putting it as the city's event has workload implications where we'd have to take something else off of people's workload. And so those are tough conversations we have quite regularly at the council. I would love to see the businesses, coalesce into an active business association. And if elected mayor, I will make a point of going up and down. I know a lot of the business owners along Main Street, but I will make a point of getting to know all of them and seeing what we can do to try to to try and create some cohesion. And I mean, we're talking about downtown here, but I do think there's a potential for a bigger business community that includes the International Way businesses, that includes the North Milwaukie industrial area businesses. We don't hear from businesses. I mean, I said we don't hear complaints. We also don't hear from businesses for the most part. I mean, and we do have the North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce. We don't really even hear from them. So I would like to hear more from the businesses and try and have a better dialogue with the businesses, with the idea of encouraging some sort of cohesive business community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilor Beatty. Councilor Heisey, you're going to close us out with the final response to the same question. One of the biggest concerns and dislikes about Milwaukie is the vibrancy of downtown or lack thereof. What can you do as mayor to revitalize the streets, encourage more business, and create downtown as our city's focal point for shopping and entertainment?
In 3 minutes or less.
In 3 minutes or less.
I live within walking distance of downtown. I spend a lot of time there already. I feel like it is in many ways already the heart of our community. And I understand that people feel like it could be more than it is right now. And I agree. Not all of those barriers are ones that we control in terms of activated storefronts and ways that it looks like it is a lively and vibrant place. But one of the things that I've worked on in the past year or two is on the Urban Renewal Areas Community Advisory Committee. I was the chair of that committee, and that was a committee that I really worked hard to get representation from businesses in downtown to engage on. I knocked on doors repeatedly until people called me sometimes at 9 o'clock at night to say they would do it if I would just leave them alone. And so we had great discussions about what can we do. We've got in an urban renewal area millions of dollars. What that committee was charged with was developing a 5-year plan for the first 5 years of what is eventually a 30-year plan that could have up to $90 million that it spends. And it's constrained to effectively downtown, Milwaukie Marketplace, where New Seasons is going in, and over towards Hillside and the hospital. That's roughly the boundaries of the urban renewal area. So we had really great conversations. I learned a lot from our businesses and from economic development consultants around how do we make this work. And I really feel like we have some tools that are coming. They're not here yet, but tools that are coming out of that process that will provide grants to do storefront improvements. We're going to see some improved signage around downtown for pedestrians. We will see that we have secure bike parking. That actually came up as a big priority for folks. We're going to see improvements in our crossways, our intersections for pedestrians. And a lot of that work is going to tie into the TSP as well. So we have these opportunities where it's kind of interleaving a lot of the work that we're already doing. And I want to also highlight when we talk about urban renewal, oftentimes people remember the 80s and how it destroyed communities of color. We were very deliberate in our work to engage around that and make sure we didn't repeat that. Main Street is our most vibrant and diverse street in all of Milwaukie. So a lot of this work is very specifically designed to support our current small businesses, bring them along in the success while we add new business and revitalize downtown atmosphere. I agree that we do need a business alliance that is much broader. I think New Seasons coming is a great anchor for those conversations. I've had really interesting conversations with industrial area folks around developing nodes around food. We have a lot of exciting opportunities is what I'm trying to say. And I think this is a good place for them to be focused.
Thank you so much, Councilor Heisey. And I'd like to thank you both so much for your time and thoughtful responses to the questions. And we are looking at one of these lovely candidates will be our future mayor. So best of luck to you all, and thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was thinking, yes, we don't have to do the close.
I know, you know. Councilor Beatty, if you would like to start with your closing remark.
Okay. I have written notes, but I'm not sure I need them. We've touched on a lot of the points already. I guess I will say I'm excited to see new faces come into Milwaukie. We have a bunch of residents who stepped forward to be on our equity steering committee. We had relatively recent residents who threw their hats in the ring to run for council. We have 1,500 apartments and a steady stream of houses in the pipeline, so we have many more new Milwaukeeans coming, and who I hope will get involved too. We have had the great outcome of having more people apply for our boards and committees than we can place on them. 8 years ago, when I got on council, it was like pulling teeth to recruit somebody to serve on a board and committee, and now people want to serve on our boards and committees. So I take that as a good sign, and I hope some of these newcomers will too. I didn't finish my opening, and one of the things I was going to say in my opening is that in addition to what I do with the city, I also serve on some nonprofit boards. I was on the board of Celebrate Milwaukie, Inc., which runs the farmers market. I left that board in 2018 to join the newly formed Milwaukie Parks Foundation Board, and I also serve on the board of the North Clackamas Watersheds Council. I bring those up just because lest anyone think that I'm only involved in this to be the mayor. for the $300 a month big salary, or the glory of being the mayor. I'm in it because I'm all in for Milwaukie. I think it's a great place for new families as well as long-term residents. And that we are making strides towards our 2040 vision for a flourishing community that is entirely equitable, delightfully livable, and entirely sustainable. Make no bones about it, we have a lot to do between now and 2040, but I think we're on the right track. Change, growth, and more density are all coming. And much of it is positive. It will create more vibrant Milwaukie, like the neighborhood hubs that we were talking about, where residents don't have to drive outside the city for everything they need. But we cannot sacrifice the livability of Milwaukie along the way. I promise to be, as I have been for the past 8 years, a voice of moderation and an advocate for incremental change. I also want to pick up on something Councilor Heisey said at the beginning, which is vote down the ballot. Or maybe I'm picking up on Greg. Vote down the ballot. Vote. Look at every race. Take a few minutes. Don't just look at the big ones that you're seeing on TV. Vote down the ballot. Our county commissioner races in particular are very important.
Thank you, Councilor Beatty. And Councilor Heisey, your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay. I started with, in my opening, I talked about how people are the greatest asset that this community really has, and that has been my experience through and through, and that is why I want to run for mayor, is because I want to continue to uplift that feature as we are a changing community. It is such a powerful thing that people show up and volunteer to put on something like this, that they show up and volunteer to put on Carefree Sunday events, that we have the winter solstice event that started because one of the NDAs decided that they wanted to go hang out down in the parking lot and have a bonfire and watch the Christmas ships, and look where that got them. And now we have 4,000 people that show up to that. So that level of engagement is incredible. And I really believe in that about Milwaukie. For all that we're hearing, that people don't feel like we are listening, I love how much this community shows up, and I hope to show up in return as much as this community shows up for itself. When I'm thinking about all of the things we've said here, and the thing that I didn't talk about hardly at all is the equity work that I'm the most passionate about, perhaps, in what we're doing right now on our council. The work we do The big work we do in the city is basically set by having council goals that gives us money and staff time to address things beyond the day-to-day business of running a city. And we chose equity, inclusion, and justice as a goal in August after George Floyd's murder. And that was very much in response to an outcry from the community that we needed to do something about this. It is difficult work. It is painful work. It is work that every single one of us needs to bring our whole heart and being to. And I am really invested in making sure that we continue that work in a way that is meaningful, not just in transforming the city's inner workings, but that we serve as an example for the community to do that hard work and make this a place where everyone feels completely welcome and like they belong. As a queer woman, I know what it's like and how painful it is and how much it costs the community when you don't feel like you belong. We lose out on the gifts of everyone when we create a community that is exclusionary. And we still have work to do. I'm really proud of the work that this community has already done. I'm incredibly proud of the work the city has already done. But I think that's the piece that I really wanted to highlight in the one thing that I didn't get to talk about as much as I might have wanted to throughout this debate. And I really thank you all for listening. This has been wonderful. I have loved having the chance to simply talk to people as I'm knocking on doors. You all are the best thing.
Thank you so much, Councilor Heisen.
Now can we go?
Now you may go. Thank you so much, and apologies for that. We appreciate both your time and your inputs on that. So now we're going to introduce our position 2 counselor candidates. So we're going to have Elvis Clark and Robert Massey come up to the podiums.
I just noticed that Elvis is wearing a purple tie.
That's what I meant. So we forgot to send everybody the memo about purple. I went and put purple in my hair. There you go. Well, thank you all again so much, and we're so happy to have you both running for position 2. So we did the coin toss earlier, or before we started today, and Mr. Massey won the coin toss, and he elected to go second. So we're going to have Mr. Clark introduce himself first, and then Mr. Massey will introduce second, and then we'll start the questions. So I'm going to hand the floor to you, and the timer will start.
Does that mean that concluding remarks would be me first? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to work out.
I thought it was supposed to switch between them.
So,
Or was it one?
Who starts?
right,
Then Robert starts.
and then
Who
I,
starts. Robert starts.
yes.
Starts. Robert starts. Yes, then Elvis, then you would be the...
So then you're the final closing remark because you do the introductions first.
Oh, okay. I'll get right to my biggest things I think we can all agree on because I'm a bit of an outsider to the established order and among the power brokers in the city. But what we can agree on, what we can agree on is the big issues, I think, improving our streets and parks, minimizing crime, and working with the county to find shelters for those people that might end up living on our streets or other public shared spaces. My wife and I moved to Milwaukie 7 years ago. We love the current day Milwaukie. The Milwaukie neighborhoods are blessed with young families and grandparents that are taking care of their grandchildren, and other people in between those stages of life and circumstances. We live in the Ardenwell neighborhood, and that's the home of the Jolly Green water tower up on there. And also, it used to be Eric's Market had on its marquee the simple 2 words, low beer. And then there's the course on 32nd, which downs costumes for all of our upcoming holidays. We're also developing a flag for the neighborhood, too. Anyways, I'm on the Public Safety Committee for the last 3 years, and I was interested in improving our streets because our neighborhood streets, because some of our neighborhood streets, as you well know, are kind of a doozy for bicycling, walking, and even driving. The city is chipping away at the streets, and they had great improvements here with the Lindenwood Avenue project and the Lake Roads, and 43rd we're going to Safeway, and that's remarkable because that used to be the treacherous road to walk. I did an Ardenwell transportation survey of the Ardenwell residents this last summer, and I compiled a list of their top transportation safety concerns, and I hope to make that a part of the documentation for the transportation safety update or transportation system update. And my professional career is an economist. I worked 25 years in the electric utility business, analyzing power plant costs and whether we could recover those costs. In the last year since I retired in 2010. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clark.
Yeah.
So we're going to hand it off to Mr. Massey for a 3-minute introduction.
Sure. Thanks to the Linwood NDA for hosting this and the ability to speak to the residents of Milwaukie about their choice for city council. I also came to Milwaukie 7 years ago because I got a sense of a very strong community engagement and that kind of thing. And I'll tell you a story that I was looking at this house, and this gentleman approached me, and he said, "Are you interested in that house?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm considering it." And he launched into a pitch telling me that Milwaukie was the best city in the state, the historic neighborhood was the best neighborhood in the city, and it would be the best decision I could make. He closed that deal right then, okay?
Wow.
And so it says a lot about a community when you're welcomed like that. And, most of us are newcomers at some point. There's some folks who had they won the lottery and they were born here and raised here and remain here. But most of us aren't. Most of us have come here for all these reasons that have drawn us, including Mr. Clark. I bring to my proposed counselorship, government, business, and volunteer experience. I really consider myself a public servant. I was a naval officer for 26 years. I served on 7 ships. I was captain of 2 ships. I've had assignments in the Pentagon, at the Navy headquarters, and at the Joint Staffs. I've been in some real garden spots like Somalia during peacekeeping operations and the Persian Gulf War. And some people will say, well, how does that fit into being a city councilor? And I will tell you that 7% of the population of the U.S. is served in the military, so there's a lot of preconceived notion that the military is just all about explosions and yelling at people, okay? And that's not true. It's very much like the planning commission or the city council. My second career was in business. I was in a Fortune 100 company. I also have an MBA, so I kind of know economics and budgets, probably not to the degree that Mr. Clark is, but I know my way around a spreadsheet. And the other thing that I brought when I came to Milwaukie was some volunteer work, and I'm a friend of the library. I'm very familiar with this room because every quarter I'm hauling in boxes of books. The Friends of the Library is not a leisurely book club, and they have me working my tail off, and I'm planting pots at the spring sale, and we made about $9,000 for this library, which I'm very proud of. I'm also an Oregon State Extension Master Gardener. And so if you call the hotline, you may be talking to me, and I may not know the answer, but I got a lot of books around where I can look up the answer, okay? I'm in my 4th year on the Planning Commission, and I think that that's valuable experience because much of what the City Council does is land use decisions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Massey. And so the first question will go to you. Milwaukie is divided into 7 neighborhood districts that we call NDAs. The NDAs are given an annual stipend of $4,000 for local grants, creating events, and holding neighborhood activities. So some of the members of the Information Committee have heard that the city is considering removing or decreasing that funding. Please share your thoughts on the NDA structure and stipends and whether you would change or eliminate the current system.
Well, I am familiar with this just because I'm a member of the historic NDA myself, and we have considered those, grants for those monies that have come forward from the neighborhood association. So I don't know about the reconsideration for those. So I just want to listen, and I will tell you that I don't bring a lot of preconceived notions to the Planning Commission or to the City Council if I'm elected, because I first want to listen. And I just don't really know the pros and cons of that, having only seen, just one NDA and how they operate with their budget. And I'm a listener above all things because I have never learned anything by talking. And so I would just like to, hear what the pros and cons are there about those changes. I'm not sure it's broken, so why change it?
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. So that same question will go to you, Mr. Clark. So Milwaukie is divided into 7 neighborhood districts we call NDAs, and the NDAs are given an annual stipend of $4,000 for local grants, creating events, and holding neighborhood activities. Some members of the Information Committee have heard that the city is considering removing or decreasing that funding. Please share your thoughts on the NDA structure and stipends and whether you would change or eliminate the current system.
No, I wouldn't eliminate the current system. You might actually increase it with the rate of inflation stipend. Ardenwell, for instance, where I'm a member of the neighborhood association, puts on these summer concerts that bring together people in the community, and that's where we engage people mostly with our neighborhood association and the issues in our neighborhood that are important and the city issues. And we also use it to build our membership if we can get membership. But the other thing is we do a lot of grant reviews and hand it out to very worthy causes like the Environmental Stewards Committee, and also some other good causes, like they were collecting styrofoam, which is a pretty nasty stuff if it breaks apart. So I wouldn't do that at all. We need to build our neighborhood associations, not disregard them that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so so we'll move on to the next question. I'm trying to ask the question again. That's not helpful. Okay, so Mr. Clark, we'll go to you again, and this is about city and city council. So the current administration has advocated and resolved itself from being removed from the North Clackamas Park District, which is also known as NCPRD. So currently, the NCPRD provides maintenance, activities, amenities, and other duties we enjoy. Milwaukie residents pay for NCPRD by a bond on our taxes. The current administration believes that it can maintain the same amount we currently pay on our taxes if we leave NCPRD. Do you support Milwaukie leaving NCPRD? Why or why not?
I do support leaving the North Clackamas Parks Recreation and take over the management of our city parks. We're closer to those parks, and so we have a closer relationship to our citizens with those parks. Let's see. Also, well, I'm kind of foggy, but I think we can do more for our parks by looking at the system development cost charges or the system development charges that we charge developers for developing new housing, because as we get more density, the people that now live there should get more amenities for their parks because they're going to be more intensely used. So that would be a way of raising revenues for our parks, and besides the property tax, which the good thing about a property tax is it is referred to the people so they can weigh the benefits and costs to them of those parks. So that's what I would do. Also, we need to look at ways of funding besides property taxes, maybe the parks. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Mr. Massey, same question. The current administration has advocated and resolved itself from being removed from North Clackamas Park District, NCPRD. Currently, NCPRD provides the maintenance, activities, amenities, and other duties we enjoy today. And Milwaukie residents pay for NCPRD by a bond on our taxes. And the current administration believes that it can maintain the same amount we currently pay on our taxes if we leave NCPRD. Do you support leaving NCPRD? Why or why not?
First of all, I'm disappointed it's come to this. I suspect that when Milwaukie started really the NCPRD, however long ago it was for good reasons, that you could get economies of scale and that kind of thing by having more of a regional approach. So I'm disappointed it's come to this, but it has. You deal with what you're, the hand that you're dealt. I think that the city staff and city council has made a strong case. First of all, I support what the city is doing in an outreach to the citizens to find out what they think. Again, I'm a listener. I want to listen. I personally support us taking over the parks because I think that ownership is essential, and we would be better stewards of the parks than the current regional setup that we have right now. But I can be convinced of other things if I hear something different from the citizens. So I want to make sure that I have all of the information before I would make a decision on something like that. But personally, I think I do support the withdrawal from the Parks District.
Thank you so much. So this next question is about development, and we'll go to you first, Mr. Massey. The Information Committee overwhelmingly said their favorite thing was the small town feel with lots of amenities near the city of Milwaukie. One major concern was adding density without a strategic plan for traffic, bikeways, pedestrians, and transit travel. How do you feel the density increase will affect our current system, and how do we plan and pay for needed improvements to our transportation needs?
That's a long question.
It is a long question, and I can repeat any part.
That's okay. I'll give it a shot. First of all, I will tell you that we do have some density coming. And I kind of break out that density in kind of a couple of different boxes. And one, we have quite a bit of multi-family units going in, apartments complex. We've all heard about the 1,500. And that has caused some concern. I don't know about you, but when I started off as an adult, I lived in an apartment complex. And it wasn't a year or two, it was more like 10 years in apartments. And so we all kind of get started there. So I'm not against apartments. But I think that there's a concern that we're putting up these apartments and there's not corresponding infrastructure that goes along, or those apartments are out of place. I will tell you that when I served during my tenure on the Planning Commission has actually disapproved a couple of those projects, okay, because they didn't fit into the neighborhood, and they were going to provide some impacts that weren't going to fit into those neighborhoods. The second part of that density is the middle housing we've heard about. We need more housing, and we need more housing because there are current residents who are being priced out of this place. I know of a lady who's lived in an apartment complex for 20 years, and she got a huge rent increase. I'm not talking about 5%, I'm talking more like 15 or 20%, and she had to move outside of the city. So we have that going on, and I will never tell you that this middle housing is going to lower rental prices or mortgage prices, but the simple law of supply and demand will mitigate those price increases by having, greater supply. I will tell you that we have a lot of work to do in the TSP, but But I will tell you that the individually owned vehicle is not going away anytime soon. I hope they're electric vehicles or hybrids or something like that, but there's still going to be a lot of cars out there. And so when the code was being considered by the Planning Commission, I advocated for a more moderate approach that would require some off-street parking, rather than the elimination of all that parking. So I am for a more moderated approach as we implement these new housing choices into the city.
Thank you so much. And I did not reiterate that we also had asked this of the mayoral candidates, and then the next question as well. All right, so Mr. Clark, the Information Committee overwhelmingly said their favorite thing was the small town feel with a lot of amenities near city of Milwaukee. One major concern was adding density without a strategic plan for traffic, bikeways, pedestrian, and transit travel. How do you feel the density increase will affect our current system, and how do we plan and pay for needed improvements to our transportation needs?
Okay. Well, we'll have increased traffic flow from the density. That's pretty much understood. I did take a look at a table of the system development charges for transportation system development charges across cities that surround us, and Milwaukee is one of the lowest ones out there. So I think that we could fund more improvements in our streets and sidewalks if we were to charge more of an average rate of system development charges. As development comes along, then we can fund these improvements. So that's what I would advocate for. As for people moving out, it's also another side of that old coin, because some people I've heard will move out of Milwaukee if it becomes too dense. So we're kind of like trying to balance these two balls. It's a juggling act. And residential affordability is a hard one because we're part of, like Adam, Commissioner Khoshrabbati said, we're part of a bigger regional real estate market. And some of the best deals I've seen for rents is actually in single family homes where people are renting out their basements to people or rooms. And I've seen like $700 for a basement rental. And that's a single mom and her kid. So we had to look out for demolition too that happens, displacing people that are renting parts of a home or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and so you touched on, Mr. Clark, we're going to you again, and again, the affordability question that was asked to the mayoral candidates. One of our information committee members is a renter in Milwaukee. They would like to purchase a home in the city, but due to high prices to purchase and increasing rental rates, they will likely leave our community to meet their own needs. With increased home prices, rental costs, and water bills, what specific plan can the city provide for those that call Milwaukee home today, but will not be able to afford it in the near future?
On that, I think what we're seeing is we need to advocate for expanding the urban growth boundary with population growth, because since the 1990s, when this things were put in place, we've seen population grow over 60%, and the land area in the UGB has only increased like 14%. So there's a mismatch there, and that drives demand back towards this urban core, which drives up prices in the homes inside. And another thing that happens with the thing that happened with splitting lots is that you actually increase the value of the land. So and that's what's actually working maybe somewhat against affordability too. So I think we would, some things we can help on renters is to maybe consider a demolition tax because of what I said about some people actually renting out basements and rooms in single family homes. And when those are demolished to make way for a multi-unit dwellings, then those people get displaced, and maybe that could be used to subsidize. I know Lake Oswego has a demolition tax that they use for general purposes almost. So I would do that. And also living costs, we could do more to keep our living costs lower. And I know this is a bone of contention, but the natural gas is, if you look at it, it's about a third of the cost to operate than the electricity in a furnace. If you get a heat pump, you can drop it to twice as much. But so we're going to have a real impact on if we try and transfer people off of natural gas. I also think that it could be people managing against the electric bill by burning more wood if they didn't have the natural gas heat. So we need to look at the impact on living costs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so Mr. Massey, I'll repeat this question again, unless you've memorized it since
Nope.
I've already said it 3 times.
Gotta take it again.
So one of our information committee members is a renter in Milwaukie, and they would like to purchase a home in the city, but due to high prices to purchase a house and increasing rental prices, they will likely have to leave our community to meet their own needs. With the increased home prices, rental costs, and water bills, what specific plan can the city provide for those that call Milwaukie home today, but will not be able to afford it in the near future?
That's a question that keeps coming up, and I will tell you that the city itself cannot control the market. They can't influence the market. I think we are already influencing the market because we're hearing that some of these middle housing developments may come. But I will tell you that if we bring in some things like the ability to put in an accessory dwelling unit in a yard or develop a duplex or something like that, it does 2 things. One, it allows the current owner of the property to live in one of those housing units, and it allows them to rent it out. So what does that do? That lowers their cost of ownership of their own home because they have a revenue stream coming in from, say, like the ADU. In the ADU, which is not really a standalone house, is not going to command the kind of prices that a standalone house would. So that person renting the ADU would hopefully get, a rental that would be more affordable. Now, we've already done those. We've put that in place through the comprehensive plan and through the code implementations. What we have to do now is we have to evaluate what's happening. Because, when we come through and we do a comprehensive plan and say, yeah, we haven't done that in 20 years, let's do it, and then we'll think about it another 20 years from now. Can't do that, okay? I was kind of brought up in a corporate environment where you're always trying to improve quality, and you cannot improve quality or outcomes unless you're measuring things. And so, I'm very much, one of these plan, do, monitor, adjust kind of people, these self-improvement things. And so I think that we have to give these things that we put in place a couple of years. And then we have to revisit them and see what the outcomes are to see if we need another mid-course correction. We can't wait another 20 years to decide where we're going. Again, the city can influence the market, can't control the market.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Clark. Or Mr. Massey, sorry, I'm so sorry. I was so in.
Just don't call me Elvis.
Should we say the king? No. So our last question of the evening, and we'll go back to you again, Mr. Massey. So the council goal. So every year, council meets and accepts 3 goals to accomplish. Members of the Information Committee expressed concerns that the goals are created without measurable, tangible results. Some felt that the goals never get accomplished before new council comes in and sets new goals. So what is your number 1 council goal, and what measurable, tangible results do you expect, and how will you see it through until it is fully accomplished?
Well, I think that that's a really good question, and I will tell you that I have some issues with goals myself. Because it's easy to say affordable housing is a goal. And you know what? It's going to be important 10 years from now, maybe even 20 years from now. And so do you want to have that as one of your 2 or 3 goals every year? There's a constant tension there. And that when you establish a goal, I think that you're trying to fulfill a need, you're trying to put attention on it, to try to get community input to it, to try to align resources and funding to accomplish it, and put it on the road to success. My personal opinion is that you don't keep it as a goal for 10 years. You build it in. You start off with a bolt-on solution, and then you have to build it in so that the existing infrastructure can carry that out. So I will tell you that we've been working on affordable housing. I'm not sure I would take it off. I think that in the short term, I think that the parks issue is probably the one definite thing that I would keep on the goals, because it was sort of inserted in mid-cycle this year because of the issues that have come up. And so I think that it would remain. I think that we would sort of evaluate the affordable housing and the climate issues to see if they remain goals. They probably would, but again, with the idea that they need to come off at some point and become self-sustaining.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Clark, you get the last question or the last response. So every year council meets and accepts 3 goals to accomplish. Members of the Information Committee expressed concerns that the goals are created without measurable, tangible results. Some felt that these goals never get accomplished before a new council comes in and sets new goals. What is your number 1 council goal, and what measurable, tangible results do you expect, and how will you see it through until it is accomplished?
Okay, I think transportation system plan update is probably our most important goal, because from there we can look at our system development charges for transportation again. And with the development coming in, we need to get ahead of that curve to set the system development charges before we get too many units that are already built, and then we don't generate the revenue for the transportation improvements we want to get in the next plan of the transportation system. So I would, that would be a key goal for me. I am a member of the Public Safety Committee, and I've been working on these issues. I met with Philip of Llewellyn neighborhood, who is the Transportation Committee on the Transportation Committee there, and he's a sharp guy on the transportation safety issues, and he's even worked out funding for improving the safety of crosswalks on King Road. I got a couple $1 million in federal funding, so I'd work with Philip and others on the transportation issues.
All right, thank you so much. And so that was our final question response. And I apologize, I have misaligned somewhere along the lines.
No problem.
So Mr. Massey, we're going to have you give the first closing remarks, and then we'll end with Mr. Clark, and you will each have 3 minutes once again. So Mr. Massey, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I would just reiterate my experience on the Planning Commission. I was the chair during the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Update. I think it's valuable. It was very public-facing input. We went through a lot of public hearings, a lot of open houses and that kind of thing. And I think that we, got good results out of that. I would also emphasize my leadership experience. One of the ships I was captain of had a lot of moving parts. It was 840 feet long. It's 40,000 tons. It had 1,100 sailors, 1,700 Marines, 25 helicopters, and 6 jets. What does that mean? Well, that means that sound decision-making is required for that kind of responsibility, and that kind of decision-making I would bring to the City Council. Why do I want to serve? Again, I reiterate that I've been a public servant most of my life, and I particularly like a speech that President Teddy Roosevelt gave in 1910, long time ago. And it was called The Citizen in the Republic. And some of the things that he talked about in that speech were he valued not the critic who would counter and tell other people that they weren't doing a good job, but he would give credit to those who were bringing solutions. And he referred to that as the man in the arena. Now, I apologize for the gender-specific language of 100 years ago, but that's become known as the man in the arena speech. And that's what I want to do. That's why I joined up for the Planning Commission, why I want to run for City Council, because I want to be the person who's trying to employ skill and tenacity, trying to get things done, as opposed to a person who's on the sideline just complaining about what's going on. And I know it's ugly and dirty and can be not fun sometimes when these clashes of opinions come out. But through my experience in Milwaukie, in my volunteer service, my service on the Planning Commission, and my service as a naval officer, I have sought those kinds of leadership positions because I wanted to be the man in the arena.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Clark, you're going to close out our evening tonight.
Okay. Well, Milwaukee Council and the city staff have a lot on their plate. And this comes during an environment where the costs are surging and budgets are tightening. So prioritizing projects becomes very important at this point. And my top 3 priorities for this work on the city council would be carrying out the sidewalk and safe projects that we have already planned out, and improving our neighborhood streets next with as we get new development coming along, we can compensate existing residents for the more density traffic flow we have. Also taking back the park management and completing our planned parks and adding new features as new development comes in that we can fund. Also, the most important maybe one is to foster a wholesome environment for Milwaukie residents, an inclusive one, and work with the county to find more shelters and beds for people that are sleeping on our streets or on shared public spaces. I've actually talked to one of the Clackamas County commissioners about coming up with a plan for reducing homelessness. And I like the resiliency and adaptation part of the climate action plan. I think street tree shade is great, and tree shading is great. And I think we could do more tree shading in the Milwaukie marketplace where we're going to get this new development. We need to put maybe a few of those development dollars over to the central area so people that can become an inviting place for people to come to. And I thank the people for listening, and it would be a lifetime accomplishment to represent the people of Milwaukie as a city councilor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'd like to thank you all so much for coming in person, or if you're watching live, or if you're going to be watching the recording. We're so thankful that you took time to listen to our great candidates. Again, we're very fortunate as members of this community to have such great folks running to represent our great community. So Councilors Beatty and Councilor Heisey, thank you so much for running for mayor, and good luck to you both. And then Mr. Massey and Mr. Clark, thank you for your time this evening, and good luck to you both as well. I'd like to again say, the Linwood Neighborhood Association, I'm very grateful to Greg Heemer, who really is just such a great community member who stepped up to put this on. This really was his, because he cares so much about the city of Milwaukie. So special thanks to Greg and really driving our neighborhood district to put on this event and, talking us into funding the filming, and then also him stepping up as a business owner with Heemer's Helping Hand to support. And then Willamette Falls videography studios. Thank you so much for your time, and the library as well. And thank you all. If you are in the Linwood Neighborhood District Association, we have our meetings on Thursday, or the second Thursday of each month from 7 to 8:30 at Linwood Sojourner School. And thank you all so much, and please vote and vote down the ballot, as Councilor Beatty and Mr. Hemer said. So thank you all.